Hello and welcome to the Financial Puzzle Playbook with your host, Jim Sumpter. I'm RJ Malik, producer of the podcast. And Jim, you have a special guest with you today, and you're going to talk about a topic that is near and dear to you. So I'm going to get out of the way and give you all the room. It's all yours.
Well, thank you, RJ. And yes, I do have a special guest with me. This is Cassidy. This is my youngest daughter, and she is the second C in CMC Financial because, as we've talked about on other episodes, when we talked about the branding of the firm, I said that the firm name needed to be named after my kids because they get all my money anyway, right, Cassidy?
Right.
Right. So she is the second C. And we are going to share something today, kind of this will be a good story time. I will tell you, this is, we'll title this one Carson's Story. Carson is the first C in CMC. And, we're not really going to touch on any puzzle piece today. What we're going to do is, I guess everything might hit a puzzle piece along the way, but there's not going to be any specific. So this episode is touching in September, and September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And as I have shared on previous episodes, if you've seen my website or anything like that, I talk about Carson a little bit and his battle with cancer. And so I thought it would be appropriate to discuss that. Cassidy is getting ready to go back to school next week, so she could come into the studio today, and we can have some conversations. We're going to tell some stories, and before we do that, though, I want to get to know Cassidy a little bit, or I want everyone to get to know Cassidy a little bit. So, Cassidy, how old are you?
I'm 20 years old.
Okay. And you're in school, you're in college?
Yes, sir. I am at the University of Alabama.
You called me sir. I love that. This is real. That's good.
You taught me my manners.
This is very good parenting, and this is a great start. So, okay. You're in a sorority.
Yes, sir. I'm an Alpha Delta Pi.
Okay. You don't have to call me sir on this,
I'm
but that's okay. What's your favorite color?
Pink.
Okay. So if you've seen our logo, you know that our logo has four colors. It's green, it's green, teal, yellow, and pink. That whole idea was Cassidy's because she said, Dad, why don't you have the four colors after the colors that are your favorite, and then each of us, and Cassidy's is pink. Okay. What's your favorite food?
Mac and cheese.
Really? Okay. Mac and cheese.
Yes.
Are you a beach girl, or would you rather go to the mountains?
Beach.
Okay. What's your favorite music genre?
Country.
Okay. And this next question may be a little bit controversial, but are you a Swiftie?
Absolutely.
Okay. And what was your first concert?
Justin Bieber.
Okay. So we've gone from Justin Bieber to country to you're a Swiftie. My goodness, child. What is your walk-up song?
Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue by Toby Keith.
Okay, so we're sticking with the country. You're very much a patriot. So, all right. So that's a little bit about Cassidy. Let's jump to Carson just a second. So, I will tell you, Carson and Cassidy were 10 years apart in age. Carson was born in 1994. He is the child that made me a dad back when I was, 24 years old. And, as he was growing up, he was a lot of fun to be around. He was a wonderful athlete. He played soccer. He played football one year. He played baseball. She's laughing because we have pictures of him. So Carson, when he was playing football, they had a rule in the league that every child had to play at least 3 plays. So we knew we were going to get to see him at least 3 plays. And if there was a penalty on one of the plays, we got to see him an additional play because that's just the way the rules were.
Y'all always said that he was the best cheerleader on the football team.
He was a phenomenal cheerleader on the football team. Yes. Baseball was his sport, though. Now, he did play baseball. He was really good at baseball. I used to coach in baseball. I like to think he was good because it was quality coaching, but I think it's because he had a lot of talent. But he also, when he got to probably 4th grade or so, he picked up this passion for music. So Carson's mom and I've shared the story that, their mom and I are divorced, but we have an amicable relationship. And but we both have this passion for music. We both love music. We were both musicians. And Carson picked that up as well. So, he was a drummer. He played guitar. He played bass guitar. He played mandolin. He played piano.
Everything.
He played everything. And if he didn't know how to play it, he would figure it out. That's just sort of the way it was. He had an amazing talent for music. And it's funny, when he was growing up, he would always ask for a sibling, and his mom and I were like, yeah, we don't know about that. And then here we were 10 years later, all of a sudden he's gonna be a big brother. So the way I like to tell the story about the way he found out, and I think you even mentioned that you found this the other day. Okay. So we created a crossword puzzle. And within the crossword puzzle were several, answers, and then the first letter of each answer would drop down to the bottom of the page. And the question was, I am going to be A, and then there were a lot of blanks, and we would fill in the blanks. So the blanks filled out Big Brother. So that's how he found out he was going to be a big brother. Now, he didn't know if he was going to have a brother or he was going to have a sister. And we got Cassidy. And so that was kind of a cool thing. And so they were, he was 10, you were just born. We're going to kind of get into some of this a little bit, but when he was 16 years old, he was in the band. He was a good student. He had just gotten his car. Life was good. And he and I would play racquetball some, and we were playing racquetball one day, and he hit the wall pretty hard. And he got up, and like every dad would do, I told him, get up, let's finish the game. Come on, you're gonna be all right. Put a Band-Aid on it, you'll be fine. And so we finished the game. In fact, he beat me that day. He didn't do it often, but he did beat me that day. And so he a couple weeks later, we were talking, and he said, my leg still hurts. And I said, you may have hit something, you may have tweaked something, you may have, damaged something when you hit the wall playing racquetball so hard, when you hit the wall so hard.
Thing about Carson, like, he never complained.
No, he didn't.
No. Never.
Right. So the fact that he was telling me this 2 weeks later, it was one of those things where I thought, okay, this is something we'll do. So we go to the doctor, check out the doctor. And he did a couple of x-rays, and I got a call about 4:30 in that afternoon. The doctor was a friend of mine, and he said, Jim, I want to have one of our radiologists take a look at this. And I said, oh, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, there's a hairline something, or maybe it's a fracture of some sort, and not a big deal. And got a call the next day that said, we're gonna refer you to a specialist. On the back of his leg is a tumor. And we said, oh, okay. Well, his mom happened to be out of town. So I took him to the doctor, met with the doctors, and basically, and in the meantime, his mom had gotten back in town, and basically we find ourselves sitting, and this was 2010, so this was 14 years ago. We found ourselves sitting in the one of the big family rooms at Children's Hospital, and with a radiologist, an oncologist, nurse practitioner, and several other hospital facilitators. And basically they said, your child has cancer. And, that's something that as a parent, nobody ever wants to have happen. And you just can't imagine, it takes your breath away. And then they said, we know that's what it is. We don't know how bad it is. So we want to do full body scans. Well, when they did full body scans, unfortunately, it was a lot worse than what they had maybe originally thought. And so he had this tumor on his leg. He had 3 spots on his lungs, a couple on his spine, and 2 on his pelvis. So he was diagnosed at 16 years old with osteosarcoma, stage 4. And it's basically a form of bone cancer. It's a very rare form. And, there's only about 1,000 new cases in the United States every year, and it primarily hits boys or males, teenage boys. So what was it, like age 14 to 20 or something like that? I think we read. And so we started this so we started this battle with cancer. And so, you know, most people know he subsequently passed away 11 and a half months later. But and I could talk for hours about all of the stories of things that he did during that 11 and a half months. And, I like to tell people, he did more in 17 years than most people do in 70, as far as the impact that he made on the community and everything like that. So, what I thought I would do, because this is really one of the first times I've ever really shared this story in this forum, and I thought it would be good to bring Cassidy in to kind of talk and just have some conversations. So, Cassidy, you were, I guess, 7 when he passed away, 6 when he was diagnosed. What are a couple of memories that you have of your brother?
Well, I mean, I was very, very young, and some things are hard to remember of him. But one thing I always, always remember is his smile, his joy for life. I mean, after everything that he was going through, he still would wake up and put a smile on his face, because at that point, that's what you do.
Right.
And he made sure that everyone else was going to be taken care of as well during that time, because as much as, I mean, he was struggling out of the most out of everyone, obviously, but we were taking care of him, and he was taking care of us as well. And I mean, there are so many memories of him, but one of my favorites.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this that Carson was not the best at directions.
He was awful at it.
Yeah, so let's go on. Yeah.
So there was one afternoon, he had picked me up from school, and it was him and his girlfriend Maddie, and I was 6 years old, so I was in first grade. And when he picked me up, we were gonna go get Yogurt Mountain.
Okay.
And I was just sitting in the back seat, and I hear Carson in the front, and he's like yelling at his GPS thing.
Right.
And he named it Audrey. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember
and
that.
And he would do this like funny little voice, and it was so funny. But we were trying to get to Yogurt Mountain, the one in Mountain Brook.
Okay.
And we ended up at the Birmingham Zoo.
Okay.
Like literally in the behind the building of the zoo.
Okay.
And I just was sitting there, and I remember Maddie looking at me like, I don't really know what to do with this situation.
Because we don't really know where we are.
We don't know where we are.
Because the follow-up to that is I got the phone call of, hey Dad. So here's what happened. So we were going to go to Yogurt Mountain, and we were going to get yogurt because Cassidy wanted yogurt, Maddie wanted yogurt, and I'm like, okay, Carson, let's get on with it, And so we go through, and I said, where are you? And he goes, well, I'm at the zoo. And I said, Carson, I said, how in the world did you get to the zoo? He said, I have no idea, but I'm here. I said, did you not use your GPS? He said, yeah, but I didn't pay attention to it. And I said, oh, okay. Well, you sound like your great grandmother or something like that with not paying attention to the GPS. But I do remember that very vividly because I'm the one who got y'all home. Now, did you get yogurt? I don't remember.
I think we did. Eventually,
you did eventually get yogurt.
Okay. Very long time to get there, though.
Okay.
Yeah, we eventually got to it.
Yeah. Cassidy, you mentioned his smile, and that's something that we used to say was an infectious smile.
It was
because he always. Now his teeth were very expensive because he had braces twice. So I would think that that's probably part of his smile, but in all seriousness, here's a kid, going through chemotherapy. He had treatments in Birmingham as well as MD Anderson at the cancer center there. And, when he went to MD Anderson, he would stay gone for 3 weeks at a time. I don't know if you remember that a whole lot, but he would, we would kind of have, we said we had a village because it was me, it was his mom, it was his aunts, uncles, grandparents, everybody was sort of pitching in at different things because no one could be gone for 3 weeks total. So we would kind of go back and forth, and we were staying at the Ronald McDonald House in Houston, Texas there. And he would go and do his treatments and his radiation and everything like that. But he always had a smile on his face, and, and he was always playing music. And so, what do you remember about his music? Because that's a huge part of his legacy.
Music was his entire life.
Right.
Like, I mean, there was not a day that go by where he's not playing some sort of instrument,
Right.
not singing. I mean, he sang every chance he got. He always wrote music, and till this day, I still go back and I listen to it, and it brings me so much joy knowing that even everything he was going through, he was still finding the joy in everything he could. And so his music was amazing. And I mean, I would just sit there and I would, like, on the floor, and I would look up and I'd be like, this is just so cool to admire. And I'll never forget, there was one time I had a hot pink guitar.
Yeah.
And it would play Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And it was my favorite thing ever. And there was one night where him and his friends were in his band. They were in the basement and they were playing music. And I was like, oh, I want to go down there. And so I finally got to go down there and hang out with the big kids. And I took down my guitar and I was like, oh, look, I can do it too. Like, and I'm playing. So I got to play with them. And it was one of my very favorite moments because, I mean, here's this guy who is 10 years older than his little sister. He's 14, 15 at this age, 16 at this age, wanting to hang out with his friends, probably not wanting his little sister to come interrupt. And here he is just letting me come down and just play on my little pink guitar over and over again. And, I mean, his music was just incredible.
Right.
It brought so many people smiles to their face.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the pink guitar. I also remember when you had a pink Barbie Jeep.
Right.
And there was one day that, Cassidy's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years old in the driveway with her pink Barbie Jeep. The next thing I know, her brother, who is almost 6 foot tall at this point, is also sitting in said Barbie Jeep, driving it in the driveway because he wanted to hang out with his little sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that was kind of cool. It was, but that's just kind of who he is. And then if you go back to the music, so Carson was diagnosed on July 27th of 2010 with cancer, and he passed away on July 12th of 2011. And so basically 11 and a half months. But he was playing music right up till then. We have pictures of him, laying in his hospital bed, hooked up to chemotherapy
with his guitar,
with a beanie hat on his cute little bald head, playing his guitar. And we have videos of that, and the chaplain would come in, the nurses. I mean, and Carson, he's a lot like me. He's a lot like you. He never met a stranger. And everybody at the hospital knew of him by the time it was over. And they would come in and he would say, hey, let me play you something. And he would play his guitar and, have fun. I remember there was you remember watching American Idol as we were growing up, or as y'all were growing up. I was, so one of the gentlemen that won American Idol, Taylor Hicks, was from Birmingham. And, here's a guy, won American Idol. He's touring the world. He played in Greece, or on the Broadway show Grease, and in New York City. He had a residency in Las Vegas. I mean, he's pretty good. He calls Carson one day while he's going through treatment. So Carson would have been, 16 years old at this point. He gets a call one afternoon, and Carson answers the phone, and he says, hey, Carson, this is Taylor Hicks. You got a minute? And he was like, yeah. And so he said, hey, and in typical musician fashion, he said, I'm playing a gig at this place called Work Play in Birmingham in December as a Toys for Tots fundraiser. I wondered if you could open for me. And he was like, Yeah. And so we have the video, there was, I don't know how many people, several
So many.
hundred, maybe up to 1,000. I don't know what the number was, but it was packed. And that was one of his big stages. The other really big stage that he had is, so we have an outdoor amphitheater in Birmingham, and there was a youth, I guess, retreat, revival, something like that, that was put on by several of the high schools and some of the football coaches. And Carson was asked to give his testimony at this venue, and 4,000 kids, and he gets up there, and he gives his testimony. And this is while he was going through cancer, and through the treatments and all. And I'll never forget, and this was in October, so he got diagnosed in July, started treatments right away. So this is October, so he's probably 3-4 cycles in by this point. And he said, and he's up there, and he's and he's talking, and he said, it's really amazing when you're put in a position to do things, and sometimes we don't understand why we're put in a position to do those, but we have to push through it and do the very best we can. Now, I've paraphrased that, but that's essentially what he was saying to 4,000 teenagers.
While he's a teenager himself.
While he was going through, cancer treatments. He played in the band. You remember him playing in the high school band? And so he played in the band, and there's 10 football games. He made 9 of them. He would go to school some. He would do his treatments on the weekends after football. A lot of times we would have a Friday night football game. He would march. We would then,
with his big drums.
Yeah, not just drums, but big old drums.
Right.
Yeah. And so he would march, and then we would check into the hospital either later that night or at like 5 o'clock the next morning, so he could start his chemotherapy, because he didn't want to miss it, and because he didn't want to miss band, because that was his world. And I think one of the interesting things about it is, in our community where we were growing up, or where he was growing up, where we lived, he was creating a legacy at 16, 17 years old. And so, Cassidy, here's my question to you, because now you're 20. And what do you think that you watching him, seeing his legacy, seeing what he did, how has that helped shape you as a young adult and as a 20-year-old?
He completely changed my life.
Okay.
I mean, I would not be the person that I am today if I hadn't watched him go through that, if I hadn't grown up hearing about all the stories of him. And I mean, he was just amazing. And he helped me learn now. I mean, because I'm 20 years old now.
Right.
He passed away when he was 17. And knowing that I'm older than my brother, who was 10 years older than me, it helps me to live every single day to the fullest, because you never know what can happen. And I remember when I was 16, about to turn 17, I was so scared, because I was like, my brother didn't make it past 17. Like, how do I know if I'm going to? And so, but every single day, I mean, 16 was one of the best years of my life, because I lived every single day to the fullest, because I didn't know. And I think watching him go through what he went through and still having the smile on his face that he had, that has taught me one of the biggest lessons in life, that no matter what, you're going to be okay, and it's all going to work out the way it's supposed to. There's a reason for everything. And his legacy continues to live on. I haven't told you this, but I thought it was really cool. When my aunt Amy, she retired, we had a retirement party for her, and I want to say he worked at Pelham. I don't remember what he did, but he worked at Pelham while Carson was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to the party, and while he was there, he came up to me and he was like, "Oh my gosh, like Cassidy." And I was like, yes, that's me. And he said, you were Carson's little sister. And I was like, absolutely, I was.
You'll
And
always be Carson's
I
little
will.
sister, even at 20 years old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he showed me his bracelet, and he is still wearing the bracelet
Wow.
that we made for Carson when he was battling cancer.
Right.
And it was still that exact same bracelet. He said he had never taken it off.
Wow.
And I mean, I cried. He cried. It was just this was 14 years ago.
Yeah.
That we made these. And to this day, he's still doing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are people that we talk to, that my mom talked to, that you talk to, everyone talks to and hears from, and they're like, we still think about Carson. And just the impact that he had on the community, on people literally everywhere. It was just, he was a 17-year-old kid battling cancer and impacting people more and more every day.
Right.
And knowing that he did that in 17 years, I hope that I can be the person he was one day.
Right. Well, you and your sister are both doing amazing. So, it's interesting that you tell that story about when you turned 17, because, as a dad, when you turned 17, that was really, really, really difficult because, it was because you were now that age, because you always have in the back of your mind, what if?
Yeah.
Because we never know. And, let me ask you this, because, your mom and I are divorced, but we're amicable. Mm-hmm. And we've both lost a child, and we've both raised another child who I think is pretty amazing, but
a little biased, but
and I think part of that's because of me, and part of that's because of your mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've both done very well in that. Do you think I'm a different person as a dad because of what we went through?
Absolutely. I mean, the person you are now today, personally, I love you.
Well, thank you.
I think you're an amazing, amazing person. And you were 30-something when Carson, 40?
Yeah, I was in my 40s.
40s? Okay.
Yeah, I was in my 40s. Thank you, but yeah.
Hey, I tried. I mean, that 14 years ago, you've changed so much, because at that point, I mean, you were going through the worst times of your life.
Right.
You and mom were getting a divorce. Carson was battling cancer. There was so much going on. Mm-hmm. And watching you, again, I was so young, but I still remember so much of it. And you were an amazing, amazing dad to Carson. I think you're even better for me now, because when you and mom had Carson, you probably never thought that you would outlive him.
Yeah.
And
no, I did.
I mean, you don't typically outlive your kids.
Right.
And so
you typically do outlive your kids. Yeah. The adults typically do outlive their kids. Normally your kids don't pass away before you do.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I said it.
That's okay.
But I think even now, because of that, you're an even better dad to me, because you don't know what's going to happen. And I think it kind of shocked y'all a little bit, and y'all have really, really tried every single day to be the absolute best parents that y'all can.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's interesting too, because, this is a podcast for clients, prospects, people that I don't know as well, or don't know me as well as maybe they will at some point. I think it's interesting too, because while I'm a totally different person, I'm a different dad, I think I'm also a different advisor. Mm-hmm. Because, there's this empathy, because here's the thing. Every family, I don't care who you are, every family has stuff. And, I talk all the time about the financial puzzle and putting the puzzle pieces together for, we've created this financial puzzle and everything's great. And we have this great plan and it's all put in place. And then life gets in the way And, I give the analogy of the dog coming in, hitting the table, and a fourth of your puzzle falls off. And that's, inflation, tax law changes, things that happen in the economy, a job change,
medical expenses,
medical expenses, which we'll get into that in just a second. And things that can totally change your financial puzzle. So I think because of things that I've been through, and I'm no different than anyone else because everyone's been through stuff. But I think the way that you learn, and I try to teach you and Madison all at the same time, all the time, I think the way you react when you have adversity is who you really are. And if you can learn from adversity and try to change a little bit from adversity, then I think that makes you, I don't necessarily want to say a better person, but a different person. And I think that's who I am today. And, so there's this empathy when clients are going through stuff, or if I'm talking with a family and they're going through something. I like to talk about and use the story about you have two eyes and one mouth, or excuse me, two ears. I say I messed up too. 2 ears and one mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. And I think there's a lot of that. Carson was a master at that. That's what he was really, really good at, because he listened to what you said. He smiled while he did it. And then he would talk or converse or, back to you. It kind of goes back to some of the things that we've gotten to do. I talk all the time about experiences, and, material things are nice. We all like our stuff, we like our things. But sometimes I think it's better to, instead of having a lot of things, to have experiences. We talked about with Carson, we have videos, we have pictures, we have those trigger memories. And I'm always a big believer, when you travel somewhere, when you go somewhere, take a picture. Don't, you're always going
to have to have your picture.
You're always going to have the memories.
Yeah.
But sometimes a picture, when you go back and you look at that picture, or you rewatch that video, you see something different when you relook at it. Or, when you go back, 10, 15, 20 years later, I talk about pictures. Here's an interesting thing. And if you've ever been in my office, I have a lot of pictures of my kids, of my family. I like pictures because each one brings about a memory. But here's what's interesting. The last picture that we have of you and Carson and Madison all together is at the beach. And it was in June of 2011 before he passed away in July. And it's hanging on my wall. I've had it blown up into a nice canvas. Here's what's interesting. In that picture, Carson will always be 17. You will always be 6 at that time because you had not had your birthday. And Madison will always be, I guess she was 15. Today, she's 28. You're 20. Carson's still 17. And it's, when you think about that, it brings things into perspective. And that's why I think it's important to have pictures and videos and experiences. I know you and I have gotten to have a couple of really kind of fun experiences when you were, I think you remember this, and when you were in middle school, it was your spring break, and I said, we're going to go on a road trip. Now, I'm always down for a road trip. You're always down for a road trip. So we take off. We know, I asked Cassidy, I said, where do you want to go? And this, and RJ, I know you're listening to this. This is the epitome of this child. I said, where do you want to go? She said, I want to go to the Mall of America, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm like, really? That's our destination spot, all the places in the country, and that's where we're going to wind up. And guess what? We did. And then I said, is there anything else? And she said, yes, I don't want to learn anything. In other words, I'm the person, when I go to a town, I get the history. I want to know the history of the town, the historical places, where's the best restaurants, where's this, where's that. Let's go do all the history.
Well, and the last trip we had been on, a big trip was Washington, D.C., and I learned so much that trip.
Yeah. So you were learned out.
Oh, yeah, extremely.
So she wanted to learn nothing. So we didn't learn anything.
It was also because I had been in school and it was my spring break. I didn't want to learn.
So we didn't learn anything about the St. Louis Arch as we went through St. Louis and toured all that. We didn't learn anything about making cheese as we toured the cheese factories in Wisconsin. But I'll tell you what we did do. I think we hit 13 states. It was 2,972 miles, because I took a picture of the mileage so that I would always have that memory. 2,972 miles over an 8-day period, 13 states. I think it
was 15 states.
Maybe it was 15. I don't know. It was a lot of states. And we get to the Mall of America and they have these roller coasters in there. And I finally looked at
much fun.
I looked at her at one point and I said, Cassidy, if we ride one more roller coaster, I'm going to throw up. And so
I love roller coasters, and we had found this one where it was like straight down, and I was like, okay, can we go again? And like we went on it, I think 5 times.
Yeah, we did.
And you were like, okay, that's enough. I can't do it anymore.
I cannot do this anymore. So here's what's interesting. That created an experience that here we are several years later talking about.
Well, I mean, this like past Christmas, instead of you buying like material gifts, we went to New York City, just the two of us, and like it was so much fun, and we got to experience things that I had never done, and I had never been to New York at Christmas, and it was just, I love experiences like that,
right?
Because you are making memories instead of buying gifts,
right?
And it makes a huge difference.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I talk to clients all the time as they're talking about, you know, saving for different goals and objectives and things like that. And travel is one of those. And I said, you know, you need to have experiences with your family. I think it's very important to do that. Because here's the thing, you might look back at one point in time and say, wow, that was the last picture that we ever had of whoever that is. And that's why that picture is when you walk into my office, that's the first thing you see is that picture of the 3 kids.
Well, and also, like, I don't remember what I got for Christmas 10 years ago, but
right.
I remember all the trips we've ever been on.
Right.
And the memories you make.
Right. And so I think that, you know, as we reflect on Carson, his story, his legacy, the things that were cool about him, you know, that's really kind of what I wanted to share in this whole episode. And I'm glad that you got to experience this with me, because I talk about my podcast all the time. Now you get to see it. You get to see how the sausage is made, you know, in the podcast studio. And I made you laugh on that one.
That was a weird reference.
Is there any other fun story or story, doesn't have to be a fun, that you wanted to tell before we wrap up? Well, I'll tell you what, while you're thinking about that, I'm gonna give one of my favorite quotes, one of Carson's favorite quotes. His birthday was March the 2nd. There was another famous birthday of someone that was March the 2nd, and it was Dr. Seuss. And the reason we know that is because as a parent who wants to go eat lunch with their child on their birthday in elementary school, inevitably 100% of the time, every single year, the school would serve green eggs and ham. And so we would go to eat lunch with Carson on his birthday and get served green eggs and ham. But one of my favorite quotes, and it's by Dr. Seuss, and I talk about this all the time, is don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And I think that is the epitome of the legacy that he left on the community, on our family, on us as individuals. We're always learning from things that he did. And, you know, I'm still always learning from things that you do. I'm always learning how to be a better dad, how to be a better advisor, how to be a better husband, how to be a better, you know, everything. And a lot of that is because of things that I think about, or the stories. And, you know, I guess the final 2 words that I'll leave are smile and be patient. On Carson's memorial grave, where his ashes are interred, is on the top of, he has a memorial bench, and on the top of it is engraved the word patience. Because, you know, even going through everything that he went through, the kid was patient. He was always like, well, let's see what happens. Let's take it one step at a time, and then we move on to the next. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I have is be patient, smile while you're doing it, and take things one step at a time.
I
So
mean,
go
my
ahead.
whole life, Carson's whole life, we grew up hearing from you and Mom, patience, my dear, patience.
Right.
Like, we would be begging for like something, I don't know what it was, and it was always be patient. And I used to hate that word. Like, I hate it. And growing up, I mean, it's like I have found it being a word that has come into my life a lot more than I thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And you ask about a story.
Right.
This one holds a special place in my heart. You know, because I was so young, like I've said, I can't remember a whole lot of things from it.
Right.
But I'll never forget this one. And it was after Carson had passed away. And I was 7 years old, and it was right around football season. And, you know, usually he would be going out to go march in the band. And I remember I was just trying to still kind of understand what was going on at that point in life. All I knew was that he had gotten sick and he wasn't here anymore. And so during that, there was one night I'd gone to bed and I had a dream. And I like never, ever, ever remember my dreams, but this one, 14 years later, I still remember it. And I believe it was Carson coming to visit me in my dream, because I remember we were at Pelham High School at the stadium, and he was sitting up on the bleachers, and he was just talking to me and being like, "It's okay, Cass. Like, you're gonna be okay, and it's all gonna work out the way it's supposed to." And he was just, it was these words of encouragement. And I remember waking up, and I was just like screaming for Mom, like, "Please, Mom, like, come on, come up here." And she ran upstairs and she said, like, what's going on? I was like, "It's Carson. Like, he's at the high school. We got to go get him." And she was like, "No, like, what are you talking about?" And I was like, "No, I literally just saw him. Like, he's there. And we have to go and get him and pick him up. Like, he needs us to go get him." And she sat me down and just kind of explained it to me. And to this day, I still believe that that was just him coming and checking on me. And I remember right before he passed away, he said he was going to come visit us in butterflies. And I have a butterfly tattoo now. And since then, I have seen butterflies everywhere at like the most special times. It's always like a little hey from Carson. And I think because of that, I mean, his legacy still lives on. And I'm eternally grateful for everything that he did.
Yeah.
I mean, he was my hero. I looked up to him.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that's a really cool story, because I think that happens to all of us as we, you know, as we have special people in our lives that pass. I think that we're always trying to look for signs, and we're always able to see those signs, and that's what we can hold on to. You know, he's a very special person. He's, you know, like I said, I named the company after the three of y'all. You know, Carson, Madison, and Cassidy. That is CMC. And so it's interesting, because every time I say the word CMC or type in my email or type in our website, I'm reminded of what that is and who that is. And that's the legacy that y'all have. You know, it makes me a better person, makes me an advisor, but keeps it always in the forefront. And I do think y'all will all get all my money one day. So, you know, that's the other, that's the other thing. You're well on your way. I will tell you that. You're doing pretty good at it right now. So, Cassidy, I can't thank you enough for taking, you know, some time to come. I know you moved back to college next week, and we wanted to try to do this before you moved on to your next venture, and you'll be a junior in a junior in college. And we're super excited about that. You're going to make an amazing teacher one day. And so I appreciate you. RJ, thanks for giving us the opportunity to tell Carson's story and, and the legacy and the part of CMC Financial that he had.
It was just a tremendous story to listen to. I can't believe the time went by as fast as it did. It was just, it was an honor and a pleasure to listen to both of you talk about Carson. Before you go, Jim, we do have to do a little business.
Okay.
How about giving your website so people know where they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So our website is cmcfp.com. So Carson Madison Cassidy financialpuzzle.com. Think of it that way. My direct number you could call or text is 205-510-9074. And we're also on all of the socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
All right. And thank you. And most importantly, thank you for listening to the Financial Puzzle Playbook podcast. We ask you to share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review because this actually helps others find the show. Again, thank you for listening. And for everyone at Financial Puzzle Playbook, I'm RJ Malik, and we'll see you at the next podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Puzzle Playbook. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Don't forget to follow us on social media by checking the links in the description. And contact us today by visiting our website at www.cmcfp.com or give us a call at 205-510-9074. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of CMC Financial. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, Private Client Services, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by CMC Financial or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Securities offered by registered representatives of Private Client Services, member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Private Client Services, CMC Financial, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.